The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Confederation stretched across the void of space, a massive structure of crystalline alloys that housed representatives from over 10,000 civilizations. Today, its usually bustling corridors were unnaturally quiet. The emergency session called by High Ambassador Cathrell of the Arcturian Collective had drawn every delegate to the main chamber. Cathrell, a being of pure energy contained within an advanced environmental suit, trembled visibly as he approached the central podium. His usual golden glow had dimmed to a pale yellow, a sign of extreme distress among his kind. The assembled delegates watched in tense silence as the most respected diplomat in the Confederation struggled to maintain his composure. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his translated voice carrying across the vast chamber, "I come before you today, not as a representative of the Arcturian Collective, but as someone who has witnessed something that changes everything we thought we knew about the universe." He paused, his form flickering. "I come to warn you about humanity." A wave of dismissive murmurs rippled through the chamber. The humans, after all, were newcomers to the galactic stage. Their civilization had achieved faster than light travel barely 2 centuries ago, and their territory spanned just a few hundred systems, a mere speck compared to the ancient empires that dominated the galaxy. "You think I exaggerate," Threll continued, his glow pulsing with urgency, "just as I did when I first encountered them. Just as the Vexthera Empire did before they made their fatal mistake." He gestured with a tendril of energy, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing the ruins of what had once been the Vexthera's capital world. These images were taken 3 standard cycles ago. The Vexthera, in their arrogance, attempted to annex a single human colony world. They believed their superior numbers and technology would ensure a swift victory. Threll's voice grew quieter, forcing the delegates to lean forward. They were wrong. So catastrophically wrong. The displays shifted, showing footage that made several delegates recoil in horror. The scenes depicted human soldiers in combat, but not as anyone had seen them before. Their bodies seemed to blur at the edges, moving with impossible speed and strength. Their eyes glowed with an inner fire that defied scientific explanation. "What you're seeing is not the result of technology or genetic engineering," Cathrell explained. "This is something the humans call hysterical strength, a natural ability their species developed over millions of years of evolution on their death world, Earth. When faced with sufficient threat or stress, their bodies undergo a transformation that we're still struggling to understand." The footage continued, showing a single human soldier tearing through reinforced barriers with bare hands, shrugging off weapons fire that should have vaporized any organic being. The timestamp confirmed this wasn't edited or enhanced. "The Vexthera learned too late that humans are not like us," Cathrell continued. "They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day, surrounded by apex predators that would devastate any of our worlds. They survived ice ages, asteroids, plagues, and countless wars among themselves, but instead of destroying them, each catastrophe made them stronger." He gestured again, and the displays showed a comparison of human biological readings during normal conditions versus combat situations. Their bodies can temporarily redirect energy to enhance strength and speed beyond what should be physically possible. Their nervous systems can shut down pain responses entirely. Their minds can enter states of such intense focus that time itself seems to slow for them. And most terrifying of all, these abilities appear to grow stronger with each generation. A delegate from the Silicon Confederation rose, their crystalline form catching the light. "Surely you're not suggesting that a single species could pose a threat to the entire Confederation?" Threll's glow pulsed red for a moment, a sign of extreme emotion among his kind. "That is exactly what I'm suggesting. The Vexthera Empire had a fleet of 10,000 ships, advanced combat systems, and warriors bred for battle. They attacked a single human colony world." He paused, letting the silence build. Within 3 standard months, their entire civilization had collapsed. Not just defeated, erased. The chamber erupted in shocked discussions, but Cathrell raised his energy form to its full height, commanding attention. I was there. I saw what happened when the humans learned that the Vexthera had deliberately targeted civilian populations. Something changed in them. Something awakened. They don't just fight wars. They adapt during them. Each battle makes them stronger, faster, more innovative. Their capacity for violence when threatened is matched only by their capacity for mercy when shown respect. The displays shifted one final time, showing the aftermath of the conflict. Where Vexthera worlds had been reduced to ash, human forces were shown providing aid to civilian populations that had surrendered, rebuilding infrastructure, and even adopting orphaned children of their former enemies. This is why I stand before you today, Cathrell concluded, not just to warn you of humanity's capacity for destruction, but to help you understand their true nature. They are not conquerors. They are not inherently violent. They are protectors. They fight hardest not for glory or empire, but when defending others. The Vexthera failed to understand this, seeing their restraint as weakness. That mistake cost them everything. He looked around the chamber, his glow stabilizing to a deep, serious blue. The Confederation stands at a crossroads. There are those among us who wish to contain humanity's expansion, to limit their influence in galactic affairs. I am here to tell you that such attempts would be not just futile, but catastrophic. We must instead learn to coexist with them, to understand them, and most importantly, to never, ever make them truly angry. The silence that followed was deafening. In the observation gallery, the human ambassador watched the proceedings with an unreadable expression. Those closest to her would later swear they saw a brief smile cross her face, not one of triumph or arrogance, but of hope. Hope that perhaps, finally, the galaxy would understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence, but their desire to use it only as a last resort. As the session concluded, Cathrell's final words echoed through the chamber. Remember this day, my friends, for we have a choice to make. We can embrace humanity as allies, learning from their resilience and determination, or we can follow the Vexthera into extinction. The humans have a saying, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Let us be wise enough to learn. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth research vessel Magellan knew something was wrong the moment her ship emerged from hyperspace. The binary star system designation, HE2547, should have been empty except for the recently established research outpost on the third planet. Instead, her sensors showed dozens of massive vessels in orbit around the terrestrial world. Analysis, she commanded, her voice steady despite the growing tension on the bridge. Her AI operations officer, ARI, responded immediately. Vessels matched known configurations of Vexthera warships, Captain. 87 capital ships detected, along with approximately 300 support vessels. They are maintaining a blockade formation around New Haven Colony. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Vexthera Empire was known for its aggressive expansion, but they had never directly challenged a human settlement before. New Haven was home to 15,000 civilians, scientists, farmers, and their families. The colony had been officially registered with the Galactic Confederation, its establishment following all proper protocols. Any response to our hails? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The Vexthera were notorious for their disdain of diplomatic protocols. Negative, Captain, Araya replied. However, I'm detecting significant energy signatures consistent with planetary bombardment preparations. Sarah's blood ran cold. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Communications are being actively jammed, Captain. All standard channels are blocked. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. New Haven had minimal defensive capabilities. It was a research colony, not a military installation. Without immediate support, those 15,000 civilians would be at the mercy of an empire known for its brutality. Show me the colony, Sarah ordered. The main view screen shifted to show New Haven's primary settlement. Even from orbit, she could see the panic. Civilians were streaming toward the emergency shelters, while the colony's handful of defense platforms attempted to power up outdated equipment that wouldn't last seconds against a Vexthera fleet. "Ma'am," her tactical officer spoke up, "we're being scanned. They know we're here." Sarah Chen had served in Earth's Space Force for 20 years. She had faced pirates, navigated diplomatic crises, and even survived a close encounter with a quantum anomaly. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. Being the only human military presence while an hostile empire prepared to slaughter innocent civilians. The decision she made next would later be studied in military academies across human space. ARIA. Initiate Protocol Omega. Authorization Chen 77 Alpha. Captain. ARIA's usually smooth voice carried a note of concern. Protocol Omega was designed as a last resort against overwhelming odds. The chances of survival are. "I know the odds," Sarah interrupted. "Execute the protocol." Throughout the Magellan, hidden compartments began to open. The seemingly modest research vessel's hull started to reconfigure itself, revealing weapon systems that shouldn't have existed on a civilian ship. But the true transformation was happening inside the crew. Sarah felt it beginning. The burning in her veins, the sharpening of her senses, the slowing of time around her. Humanity had learned long ago to hide their true capabilities, to present themselves as just another spacefaring race. But evolution had gifted them with something their enemies never understood: the ability to transcend their normal limitations when survival was at stake. "All hands," she spoke into the ship-wide comm, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to resonate on a primal level. "This is your captain. New Haven Colony is home to 15,000 civilians, our people. The Vexthera Empire intends to murder them all. We are the only thing standing between those families and extinction." She paused, feeling the collective resolve of her crew strengthening. "You all know what we are, what we can do. Today, we stop hiding." The first Vexthera shots came as expected, a warning barrage meant to force their surrender. The Magellan's newly revealed defense systems absorbed the impact without difficulty. Then Sarah gave the order that would change galactic history. "All hands, combat protocols authorized. Show them what humanity can do." What happened next would be debated in alien military circles for centuries. The Magellan, a ship that should have been destroyed in seconds, began moving in ways that defied physics. Its crew, operating in perfect synchronization, pushed their ship and themselves beyond what should have been possible. The Vexthera commanders, expecting an easy victory, found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The Magellan danced through their formation, its weapons striking with impossible precision, its defenses adapting to each new attack pattern. But it wasn't just technology that gave them their edge. The human crew, their bodies and minds enhanced by ancient survival mechanisms, processed information, and reacted at speeds that bordered on precognition. Sarah felt connected to every member of her crew. Their collective consciousness focused on a single goal: protect the innocent. Hours passed like minutes as the battle raged. The Magellan suffered damage, serious damage, but it refused to fall. For every hit it took, it struck back harder, learning, adapting, evolving its tactics. The Vexthera, who had never faced an enemy that grew stronger during combat, began to realize their terrible mistake. Then came the transmission that changed everything. Through the chaos of battle, a message from New Haven's surface reached the Magellan. They're deploying ground forces. They're targeting the civilian shelters. Sarah Chen felt something shift inside her, something ancient and powerful. The Vexthera had crossed a line they didn't even know existed. Throughout human history, there had been one constant: threaten human children, and you awaken something that can't be stopped. "AI," she commanded, her voice carrying an edge that made even the AI pause. "Broadcast on all frequencies, all languages. Let everyone hear." She stood from her captain's chair, her eyes glowing with an inner fire that would haunt Vexthera nightmares for generations. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. You have targeted civilian shelters containing children. This is your only warning. Withdraw immediately, or what happens next will be remembered as long as your species exists." The Vexthera response was predictable. They laughed. Their command ship transmitted images of their ground forces approaching the civilian shelters, a clear message that they believed themselves unstoppable. They never saw what hit them. The Magellan's final transformation began, systems burning out as they operated far beyond their design specifications, the crew pushing themselves past all known human limits. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding, connecting not just with her crew, but with the terrified civilians below. In that moment, she understood what the history books had meant about humanity's true potential. What followed would reshape galactic politics forever. A single human ship, defending a single human colony, did what no species had thought possible. They broke the Vexthera Empire's will to fight. The battle for New Haven would be remembered not just for its outcome, but for what it revealed about humanity. When the dust settled and reinforcements finally arrived, they found the Magellan barely intact, its crew alive but forever changed, and a very important lesson written in the wreckage of the Vexthera fleet: never threaten human children. Dr. Elena Martinez stood before the holographic display in her laboratory on Earth, watching the data stream in from across human space. As the leading xenobiologist at the Terran Institute of Advanced Studies, she had spent decades studying humanity's unique adaptations, but nothing had prepared her for what she was seeing now. "Play it again," she commanded the lab's eye. "Focus on the neural pattern changes." The display showed a time-lapse compilation gathered from millions of human citizens across hundreds of worlds. It started with the moment news of the New Haven attack reached each population center. The neural patterns were normal at first, standard human baseline. Then came the spike of collective anger, fear, and determination. But what followed defied everything they thought they knew about human physiology. The patterns weren't just changing, they were evolving in real time. Dormant sections of the human genome were activating across the entire species, triggered by the shared knowledge that their children had been threatened. It was as if humanity's DNA had been waiting for this moment, carrying ancient instructions passed down from when their ancestors fought prehistoric predators on Earth. Dr. Martinez, her assistant, called from across the lab. "You need to see this. The Vexthera just launched simultaneous attacks on 3 more colonies." Elena's hands tightened on the edge of her console. "Show me." The display shifted to real-time footage from the attacked colonies. What she saw made her breath catch. The colonial defense forces weren't just fighting back. They were demonstrating abilities that matched or exceeded what Captain Chen and her crew had shown at New Haven. Ordinary civilians were moving with impossible speed and strength, their bodies adapting to threats in ways that should have taken generations to evolve. "It's spreading," she whispered. "The awakening is spreading." Her quantum comm chirped, a priority call from the Terran High Command. Admiral James Wong's hologram appeared, his usually stoic face showing clear concern. "Doctor, please tell me you have an explanation for what we're seeing out there." Elena took a deep breath. "Admiral, I believe we're witnessing the activation of what I've termed the Guardian Protocol, a genetic failsafe built into our DNA over millions of years of evolution. When our ancestors faced extinction-level threats, their bodies adapted, passing those adaptations to their offspring. But this is different. The threat to our children has triggered something unprecedented, a species-wide awakening. Can you control it?" "Control it?" Elena laughed softly. "Admiral, this isn't a weapon or a technology. This is who we are, who we've always been. We just never had a reason to access this part of ourselves before." The Admiral's hologram flickered as he received another report. His eyes widened. "The Vexthera just hit Madison Colony. But this can't be right. The reports say the colonists are showing telepathic abilities, coordinating defense efforts without any communication technology." Elena nodded, unsurprised. "Emergency neural synchronization. We've seen hints of it in identical twins, and close family members under stress. Now it's manifesting on a larger scale. Humanity is adapting not just physically, but mentally. We're becoming what we always had the potential to be. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. On New Terra, miners trapped by Vexthera bombardment discovered they could sense structural weaknesses in rock with a touch. On Proxima b, farmers found they could accelerate plant growth through sheer will, feeding evacuees from destroyed colonies. Each new threat seemed to unlock new abilities, as if humanity's DNA contained a toolkit for survival that was only now being opened. But it was the children who showed the most dramatic changes. Those born after the New Haven incident displayed abilities from birth that their parents had to struggle to access. They could instinctively sense danger, communicate telepathically with their peers, and adapt their bodies to new environments without technology. The Vexthera Empire, in their arrogance, had assumed they were dealing with just another spacefaring species. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity's ancestors first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. Elena's lab became the center for understanding these changes. As data poured in from across human space, patterns began to emerge. The abilities weren't random mutations, they were targeted adaptations, exactly what was needed in each situation. It was as if humanity's DNA contained instructions for surviving any possible threat, written there by countless generations of survivors. Admiral, Elena said, studying the latest data, "I think I understand now. We've been looking at human evolution all wrong. We thought we had reached our peak, that technology would drive our future development. But what we're seeing now suggests that our ancestors built something remarkable into our genetic code, a way to access abilities we would need only in our species' darkest hour." And the Vexthera triggered it, the Admiral concluded. Not just the Vexthera, Elena corrected, the threat they represent. For the first time since we left Earth, humanity faces a genuine existential threat. Our children's futures are at risk. That knowledge has reached into our DNA and woken something that's been waiting since the first humans huddled around fires, protecting their young from creatures in the dark. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war, they were evolving to win it. Each battle, each threat, each challenge was making them stronger, faster, more adaptable. The Vexthera had wanted to contain humanity's expansion. Instead, they had become the catalyst for humanity's next evolutionary leap. As Elena watched the data continue to stream in, she felt a mix of awe and concern. The awakening couldn't be stopped now. Humanity would never be the same. The only question was, would the galaxy be ready for what they were becoming? In the depths of space, aboard their massive warships, the Vexthera commanders were beginning to realize their terrible mistake. They had sought to crush what they saw as a young, weak species. Instead, they had awakened giants who had been sleeping so long, they had forgotten their own strength. The war was about to enter a new phase, and humanity was no longer fighting just to survive. They were fighting to protect their children's future, and that made them more dangerous than any force the galaxy had ever known. High Admiral Vexkar stood on the bridge of the Empire's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching tactical displays with all four of his eyes. The reports from across the front lines defied logic. His forces had launched what should have been a devastating strike against the human core worlds, bringing to bear the full might of the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "My lord," his tactical officer's voice quavered, "we've lost contact with Attack Group Sigma. All 40,000 ships, just gone." Vexkar's secondary heart began to race. Gone. Explain. The humans, they're not fighting like before. The abilities they displayed at New Haven and the other colonies, they've evolved. Our forces report seeing things that shouldn't be possible. The main display activated, showing footage from the front lines. Vexkar watched in growing horror as human ships moved in perfect synchronization, their crews displaying abilities that went beyond even what their intelligence had predicted. But it wasn't just their ships. Entire human populations were working in harmony, their minds linked in ways that made them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. On New Eden, one of the human agricultural worlds, a Vexthera ground force of over 1 million troops had been stopped by a handful of human defenders. The humans moved like living storms, their bodies emanating energy that their scientists couldn't explain. More disturbing were the reports of human children evacuated from the combat zones. They were developing abilities that made their parents' capabilities seem primitive in comparison. "My lord," his communication officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, bypassing our encryption." "Show me." The holographic display shifted to show a human woman. Vexcar recognized her, Dr. Elena Martinez, one of their leading scientists. But something about her had changed. Her eyes held an inner light that made his warrior's instincts scream in warning. "This is Dr. Elena Martinez, speaking on behalf of United Humanity," she began, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to resonate on a subspace level. "For months, you have attacked our colonies, threatened our children, and attempted to destroy our way of life. You believed you were fighting a young species that could be easily conquered. That was your first mistake." The display split to show footage from across human space. Vexcar watched as ordinary humans demonstrated abilities that should have been impossible. Farmers were accelerating crop growth with a touch, healing the wounded with thought alone. Engineers merged with their machines, becoming one with their ship's systems. And the children were becoming something entirely new. "Your attacks have awakened something that has slept in our DNA since our ancestors first stood upright on Earth," Elena continued. "Every threat you've made, every attack you've launched, has only served to speed up our evolution. We tried to warn you. We tried to show mercy. That was our mistake." Vexcar felt a chill as her expression hardened. "You targeted our children. You've threatened our future. And in doing so, you've triggered changes in our species that cannot be undone. What you're seeing now isn't just humanity fighting back. It's humanity becoming what we were always meant to be." The tactical display erupted with new alerts. Across the front, human forces were moving with impossible coordination. Their ships seemed to phase through Vexthera weapons fire, their crews operating with a level of neural synchronization that made them seem like single organisms rather than collections of individuals. "This is your final warning." Elena's voice carried an edge that made even Vexcar's battle-hardened troops step back. "Withdraw your forces. Return to your territory. Leave humanity and our allies in peace. You have 1 standard hour to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. "My lord," his tactical officer spoke up, "new reading from the human worlds. Their neural activity, it's changing. The entire species appears to be linking into some kind of collective consciousness while maintaining individual identity. The power readings are off the scale." Vexcar, supreme commander of the largest military force in known space, felt true fear for the first time in his life. He had studied human history before launching this campaign. He had read about their wars, their conflicts, their ability to unite against common threats. But nothing had prepared him for this. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were transcending what his people thought possible for a biological species. Each attack, each threat, had accelerated their evolution. Their children were being born with abilities that their greatest scientists couldn't explain. And now, facing the greatest threat to their existence, they were achieving something unprecedented. A species-wide awakening. "My lord," his science officer's voice was barely a whisper, "the humans, they're changing the fundamental laws of physics in their vicinity. They're not just adapting to the environment. They're adapting the environment to them." Vexcar watched as new data poured in. Human civilians were instinctively developing whatever abilities they needed to survive. Their soldiers moved with impossible speed and precision. Their ships seemed to bend reality itself. And through it all, their collective consciousness grew stronger, guided by an unshakable determination to protect their future. The hour Elena had given them was ticking away. Vexcar, leader of an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds, faced the most important decision of his life. His ancestors had built their civilization on the belief that military might could solve any problem, that any species could be subjugated with enough force. But as he watched the humans continue to evolve, continue to transcend what should have been possible, he realized his ancestors had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their children's future. And that made them capable of things that defied comprehension. The decision he made in that next moment would determine not just his empire's fate, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The humans had offered one last chance for peace. The question was, would the Vexthera Empire be wise enough to take it, or would they force humanity to show them just how far they could evolve when pushed to their absolute breaking point? 10 years after the Vexthera conflict, the Galactic Confederation's Hall of Harmony hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from every known spacefaring civilization had come to witness something many had thought impossible: the formal peace treaty between humanity and the reformed Vexthera Commonwealth. High Ambassador Cathrell, his energy form glowing a serene blue, stood at the central podium beside Dr. Elena Martinez. She had changed since that day she delivered humanity's ultimate warning. The inner light in her eyes was still there, but tempered now with wisdom and compassion. A decade ago, Cathrell began, his translated voice carrying across the vast chamber. I stood before the Confederation and warned of humanity's potential. I spoke of their capacity for violence when threatened, their ability to transcend normal limitations when protecting their own. What I failed to understand then was that these same traits would make them our greatest teachers. The assembled delegates turned their attention to the massive windows overlooking Earth. The planet had become a beacon of hope in the years following the conflict. After Vexcar made the wise choice to withdraw his forces, humanity had done something remarkable. They had offered peace. Elena stepped forward, her presence commanding attention without effort. The neural network linking all humans had evolved into something beautiful, a collective consciousness that enhanced rather than suppressed individuality. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of unified human experience. The awakening changed us, she acknowledged, but not in the way many feared. We discovered that the same abilities that made us formidable in war made us exceptional at healing, at building, at understanding. Our children, born with these gifts, showed us the way. The display behind them showed images from across human space. The same abilities that had let them fight off the Vexthera were now being used to terraform dead worlds, heal sick populations, and solve problems that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Human children, their abilities growing with each generation, had become bridges between species that had never been able to communicate before. Vexcar, now the elected leader of the Commonwealth, rose from his seat. A decade ago, he had made the decision that saved his civilization, choosing peace over extinction. His people had spent the years since transforming their militant empire into something new, learning from the very species they had once sought to conquer. We came as conquerors, he admitted, his voice carrying genuine remorse. We thought we understood power, but the humans taught us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to. Their mercy after our surrender taught us more than their victory. The displays showed scenes from across former Vexthera space. Human healers working alongside Vexthera scientists to cure diseases that had plagued their people for generations. Human children teaching their Vexthera counterparts to access abilities their species had forgotten they possessed. The same adaptability that made humans devastating in war had made them invaluable in peace. The galaxy stands at a crossroads, Elena continued. The abilities we developed during the conflict cannot be unused. Our children are born with capabilities that would have seemed godlike to our ancestors. But we've learned that with great power comes an even greater responsibility. She gestured, and the displays showed the new Harmony Institutes being established across the galaxy. These centers were places where humans shared their gifts, teaching other species not to replicate their abilities, but to discover their own unique potential. We discovered something remarkable in the aftermath of the conflict, Alina explained. Every species has hidden potential locked in their genetics. Our awakening didn't just change humanity. It showed us how to help others access their own dormant abilities. The Vexthera, for instance, have rediscovered their species' lost capacity for empathic healing. The Arcturians have found they can communicate across vast distances without technology. Each species has its own gifts, waiting to be awakened. Threll's glow pulsed with agreement. The humans have become something unprecedented in galactic history. Not conquerors, not rulers, but catalysts. They awaken potential in every species they encounter, while fiercely protecting the right of each civilization to develop in its own way. The ceremony continued, but the real story was happening across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, humans worked alongside other species, helping them discover their own paths to evolution. The same determination that had let them overcome the Vexthera threat now drove them to build something greater than military victory, a galactic civilization where every species could reach its full potential. In orbit around Earth, the massive station known as the Crucible had become a symbol of this new era. Here, children from every species came to learn not just about their own capabilities, but about each other. Human children, born with abilities their parents had fought to unlock, served as guides and friends to young aliens discovering their own gifts. As the peace treaty was signed, Alina looked out at the assembled delegates and felt the warm hum of humanity's collective consciousness. They had faced extinction and emerged not just stronger, but wiser. The same gifts that had let them defeat an empire now let them build bridges between civilizations. We stand here today not as conquerors or victims, she concluded, but as proof that evolution doesn't have to mean conflict. The Vexthera taught us that we were capable of more than we knew. In return, we taught them, and the galaxy, that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to create, to heal, to understand. The galaxy had indeed changed. The species that had evolved on a death world, carrying in their DNA the tools for surviving any challenge, had become something their ancestors could never have imagined. Not the destroyers many had feared, but the guardians and teachers that every spacefaring civilization needed. As the ceremony concluded, a group of children, human, Vexthera, and a dozen other species, played in the station's arboretum, their laughter carrying across species boundaries. They were the first generation to grow up in this new galaxy, where the same forces that drove evolution could be guided by wisdom and compassion rather than threat and fear. The awakening had changed humanity forever, but in doing so, it had given the galaxy something it desperately needed: hope for a future where every species could reach for the stars and find not just their own potential, but friends to help them achieve it.